Well, I didn't join the Army. I was drafted right after I got my degree in 1968. I had gotten my degree from Olivet College and was married. I had signed a contract a month prior to my graduation to teach and coach at South Haven. Got a little letter from my uncle, Sam's his name, Uncle Sam, and he said I should report for a physical on July, I think it was the 10th. And I reported for the physical, figured it was just a routine thing that they were checking to see how fit people were in my area, but that wasn't the case. They were going to draft me and did. Drafted me right into the Army August 29th, 1968. I raised my hand and was sworn in Detroit, and then went down to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Well, at Fort Knox, Kentucky, I have two theories. Both of them gather around the courses that I had taken in college to become a coach. I'd taken kinesiology, physiology, anatomy, first aid, advanced first aid, strapping, and taping. And I think that they used that particular criteria to send me to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, in San Antonio, to become a combat medic, because draftees usually don't get to do those kinds of things. I think originally they were preparing me to come in and be part of that big push to get the troops, the grunts, into Vietnam. On May the 12th in the evening, battalion commander John Brandenburg called Ernie Carrier, our lieutenant, who was head of our company, into his hooch area and told him that he was going to send Charlie Company into Tam Ky. The company commander, Lieutenant Carrier, said, well, I think this is a flawed mission. And Brandenburg said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you haven't said any forward observation in there, so we really don't know how many enemy soldiers are in there. And the battalion commander said, well, either you take your men in or we're going to court-martial you. Ernie Carrier was a very young man. He was not quite 21. He turned 21 the day after he got his captain bars later on in that summer. He came over the first time, his first tour. He was 17, lied about his age to get in. And I'm very, very glad that he chose to take us in there, because he knew if he got court-martialed, they'd still send us in with somebody else. So because he went with us and he was so skilled, I'm sitting here talking to you right now. On the morning of the 13th, right around 1000 hours, we went, I think we figured out there were 13 or 14 helicopters that took the 89 of us into the Tam Ky area. Just a little bit, not a little bit, about probably a mile or two from New Yon Hill. We could not see foliage or anything. That's how far away it was. But we were ready. And what our first assignment, they told us, was going to be a blocking force. Well, of course, that wasn't going to happen, because unbeknownst to us, there were around 2,000 NVA and 700 VC on that hill. During the day, I had some heat exhaustions, and guys got injured jumping out of the helicopter. It was a hot LZ, which meant they were getting fired upon as they brought us in. They won't land in those situations. They tell you to jump out. We've got 100-pound packs. Mine was about 130 pounds. We got our weapons and that, and some of the guys hit some rocks and twisted some ankles and that type of thing. So I had to get them out of there. That afternoon, they asked us to go out and check out the area. And I'm thinking, these guys gotta be crazy. We had 2 helicopters shot down, and they're asking a platoon, the 2nd platoon, to go out there and check the area out. There's no way. They could be waiting for us out there, and they were. The front squad, I don't know how far out we were, but I was in a little trench line, and they had gone down the trench line and turned 90 degrees to the right when they hit it. In the process, 2 guys had fallen back and gotten up on a berm up over the top of the trench line where I was standing. They called for a medic, and I looked up there, and sure enough, hiding in a couple of bushes there without their weapons. I jumped up on the berm, gave my weapon to one of the machine gunners. Sergeant Hatton and Sergeant Mittendorf were covering me. there, and I jumped up on the berm, and just before I got to him, I heard an explosion behind me, and the ping of metal going into my body from head to foot. That was an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, and although it stunned me for a second, I continued on to do what I needed to do. Discovered these two guys were not wounded, but they were very, very scared, frozen in place, so I dragged the two of them across and into that trench line. And just as I got there, I realized Mittendorf and Hatton are gone. They had pulled back. Well, I turned and looked back up on the berm, and there's a guy about 10 meters away looking me right in the eye, an AK-47 in his hand. Another guy next to him looking the other way, but this guy knew where I was and who I was. And so I told the other two men, follow me, and I started running down that trench line. And then I figured, this is slowing me up. So I got out into the open and probably ran the best 40-yard dash I have ever ran in my life, weaving with the bullets bouncing off the ground around me. But by this time, I could hear in the distance, as in front of me, was my men. The machine gunners are now firing, keeping those guys from getting a really good shot at me. Then that evening, after I got everybody in and patched up, my worst wound was my last wound that I had gotten in, and he was a sucking chest wound, so I knew we had to get him on. Got everybody on, and then Lieutenant Carrier said, Doc, get on. And that's when I remembered that I had gotten hit, and I looked down and I had blood on me, and I said, no, I'm not going. When I was out there in that trench line, I looked up towards the hill, and they looked like lava coming down off that hill. That's how many people there were on that hill. And he said, why not? And I said, you're gonna need me. I'd rather be dead than have heard the next day that one of my men got hit and I wasn't there to save him. So my dad always told me, don't do things halfway. If you're given a job, do it the best of your ability and do it until the end. And I knew we were nowhere near the end. So that's the first day. Every time I went out was a miracle. And 5 of those 10 times that I went out, I saved 11. And they say I went out 10 times, and that's true because the first time I dragged 2 guys at one time into the trench line. Each one of those trips is a miracle within itself. The fact that our company was able to survive, that's a miracle within itself. And I also had quite a conversation the second evening with God about the fact that I all of a sudden remembered that my father, who is really my best friend as well as my father, I had not told him that I loved him since I was a little boy because he just didn't do it. He loved me, and I'm sure he knew that I loved him. We showed love to each other, but it hit me that I'm a long ways away from my dad, and so kind of bargained there, and I said, if you can get me out of this hell on earth so that I can tell my dad that I love him one more time and hug him, I'll be the best dad and the best coach and the best teacher that I could possibly be. And this incredible peace came over me. I can't even describe it, because now I knew it was not my will, that I'd handed it over to him. And if I died in that battle, that was his will. If I didn't, then I've got to give him the credit. And I've been trying to hold up my end of the bargain since I got home. But the first thing I did do in Chicago O'Hare Airport was run to my dad, hug him, and tell him that I loved him. And he returned the same 3 words, and like we'd been doing it forever. I think we learned a lot from that situation. If anything was positive alone in Tam Ky, it was that you need to express to those that you care that much about that you do love them. Well, the second day of the battle was worse than the first day. We were getting very low on ammunition for one, so they wanted the company to move so they didn't know where we were. They knew where we were. As a matter of fact, they'd moved closer this time. So the first platoon got hit a lot earlier than we'd gotten hit when we went out. So Dan Shea and myself went to work pulling in those closest to the perimeter. And then we started going out after people, and Dan, about the third or fourth time out, was killed, got his body in. And Daniel Shea posthumously got the Medal of Honor back in 1970. So as far as I know, this is the only battle where two medics in the same battle received the Congressional Medal of Honor. I was wounded the second time with an AK-47 bullet wound to the arm right here, and I stitched that up myself later on. And I got hit again with a rocket-propelled grenade when I went out to get this machine gunner who'd gotten hit. The bullet went through, I know this now, I didn't know at the time, but I knew that it had not hit any main arteries because there wasn't a lot of blood. Went through that hole in the scapula and came out the front, right here on the chest. We were getting short on ammunition, so the lieutenant asked somebody to put out a blinking light. We're going to try to get some resupplies in. So nobody jumped up, so Doc did, and I crawled out there, and I'm in the prone position, face down, holding out in front of me this blinking light, and I had it in a helmet so that maybe it could be seen. How silly is that, right? A blinking light couldn't be seen, right? Maybe it would just shoot upward, but of course that helmet lit up each time it blinked, and they're shooting at me, and this red streamer is going over the top of me every so often, boom, boom, right over the top of me. I'm thinking, what is that? Well, I found out later on who it was. We didn't get resupplied. I'm laying out there thinking, wait a minute, if they kick out that resupply, it's going to come down right on top of me if they hit this blinking light. But that we needed it, so it didn't matter one way or the other. I hope they would be a bad shot and not hit the light directly. 27 bullet holes in that resupply helicopter. It had to retreat, never got the resupply. So we went back out, and we're fighting, and all of a sudden, I saw this, that streamer that had been going over the top of me. It looked just like it, and sure enough, behind a tree where I had initially dropped my pack and gotten all of the medical pressure bandages and things out of there. There's somebody with a RPG, rocket-propelled grenade launcher there. So I timed it. I took a grenade and pulled the pin on it. I still got the handle down, and I saw the front of that RPG coming out from around there, and I flipped the handle off, counted 1, 2, and catapulted it right in front of that tree, and it exploded, and I saw the front of that RPG go up. The next morning, we found him dead there with his hand on the trigger. The big thing on that, too, is to not only saving those guys and getting them out of the danger area where they can be killed or captured, we can get them back into the fight. We were getting low on men. So after we dusted everybody off the next morning, I think there was 32 of us left. In the 2-day battle, 12 had been killed, 1 missing in action, and the one that was missing in action was one of the guys I drug across the berm. He did not follow me out of there. He went his own way and got captured. We had probably 32 wounded and sent in, and then I had the heat casualties and the injuries. So I'm probably 50, 60 that I worked on during those 2 days, and it was 2 of the worst days of my life, 48 hours, and I can't believe I got an award for those 2 worst days of my life, but I did. The word intrepidity, as used in the citation, and that means that if you chose not to do the action that you did, it would not be held against you that it's that dangerous. So I think that's an important word to bring out, intrepidity. Above and beyond the call of duty. Well, you've heard me say it before, and you'll hear those that wear this medal, I was only doing my job, and that's the truth. That's why I didn't leave the day before. The job wasn't over. I was to fight till the end and do my job till the end. My father had ingrained that in me. You'll see a lot of those characteristics in the individuals that wear this medal, I think. But remember, I'm wearing this for an incredible group of guys that showed the same thing.